Boxing King Media in association with Boxroll. Delighted to have with me Ben Shalom. Ben, it's been a few weeks.
It has.
Firstly, how are we?
It's been good not to. It's been a bit of a rest, which is good. I think our last show was July the 1st, Savannah Marshall in Manchester. So yeah, good to get back.
Buatsi, Azeez, we're here for that press conference today. Buatsi made a comment about you. Actually, he said that you looks like your team Azeez.
It's been so difficult, this one, because Dan. Look, I've been friends with Dan since the start. I can't hide. I'm very, very good friends with Dan. I'm so proud of him for getting here. I'm so proud of the journey he's been on. But Joshua Buatsi was one of the biggest statement signings that we've ever made. Showed me a lot of trust. Showed me a huge step in sort of coming over. And yeah, I think it's a bit of banter. I think he knows that I'm close with Dan. But for me, this is one of those fights where everyone in boxing just wants the best man to win. It is one of those fights. I think they're both incredible professionals. They're both warriors. They both love to fight. They're both putting it all on the line. And I'm just delighted that they both want to step in the ring with each other and headline a card like that. Two boys from 10 miles apart, southern area boys, unbeaten, now headlining the O2 on Sky Sports. It's a special moment for them. And there's a lot of bullshit in boxing. There's a lot of fights that we see and fans don't necessarily want. But this is just a special advert for boxing. It really is a real advert for British boxing, and two old school fighters in an old school fight in a setting like the O2. It's I can't wait.
Both fighters had the opportunity to go down a different route. Buatsi, before he signed you, had the opportunity to fight Bivol, opted not to, and join yourself and Sky. Dan also had the opportunity. I know he had some conversation with Frank Smith, etc. What was the ultimate factor for Dan to stick with Boxer?
Dan Azeez, I mean, we never received an offer. Dan Azeez fights for Boxer and Sky and was always in that situation. I think it was maybe an attempt to stop the fight or get involved, but I don't think people realise the relationship and everything between myself and Dan and the journey that we've been on together. So I just think it was one of them. Every fight we seem to make seems to come with an attempt to stop it, which I don't think is good for boxing, but we just have to crack on. And as I say, I never actually received an offer. So for all the talk, there was never an offer received, and I'm just delighted that this fight goes ahead. And
the winner of this fight definitely goes on to fight for the world title thereafter.
Look, that'll be up to the WBA. It's final eliminator when they order it, but that's what's on stake, and I know Anthony Yard is watching this fight very carefully as well, which is a huge fight for the winner. But I think the loser comes again. These are the fights we want to see. We talk about the cruiserweight division and how that's been so competitive and how there's so many fighters fighting for the same positions. But the light heavyweight division with Buatsi, Azeez, Yard, Craig Richards, Lyndon Arthur, Craig when he's back. It's a big division. Callum Smith obviously going to be fighting for a world title. In Britain, it's a huge division, and to see two of the top guys, unbeaten guys, go head-to-head in a fight like this, yeah, I really, really can't wait.
Undercard, I know you're going to announce in due course, but what the chief support we do know, Lawal versus Chamberlain, or Chamberlain versus Lawal. Not as heated as last time, but hopefully the fight no one pulls out this time round.
Yeah, it's just another big London fight on a London card. Mikel Lawal, to see the journey he's been on. People talk about Dan Azeez. When I met him, he couldn't even afford the train up to Manchester. We had a photo shoot. It was for the Ultimate Boxer tournament, maybe number 3 or 4, long time ago. And I remember this guy just turning up in the physique of an absolute monster, but I'd never heard of him. And we got to know his story. We decided to put him in the tournament. We didn't think he would necessarily win that tournament. It was a very competitive cruiserweight tournament. I remember a lot of decent names in there, and he just came through unbelievably well. And since then, he's just improved and improved. His power is frightening. When he won the British title, I think David Jameson, it wasn't his best performance. I know he'd been ill all week, and that will give Isaac Chamberlain a huge amount of confidence that he is the better fighter. He is the more cultured fighter. He has fought at a higher level, no doubt. I would say most people's favourite. But Mikel Lawal is an absolute machine. He's worked so hard to get to this position. It means so much to him. And yeah, another great fight for British boxing.
Yeah, let's move away from October 21st. Let's roll on to your next show, Chris Eubank Jr. Liam Smith versus Chris Eubank Jr. The rematch is on. Haven't caught up with you since the announcement, Ben, but were you relieved to get it over the line because there was so much talk that this fight might not happen and Chris might take another route?
and I said it all. I said from the start, and I've always said that fight was always happening, and that's what I've started to realise is it's crazy because I read headlines and I see things, and I'm like, but I know that that's not going on, or I know that that's not true, and I think it gets in the fighters' heads, and then they get nervous about is it happening, is it not? But it was already, agreed. The fight was already happening, and it just was announced like we thought it would be. We planned for it, and of course, it's a huge fight. I think it's a bigger fight than it was the first time, just because at the first one, a lot of people, and if you look back at the predictions, even people within boxing were saying Chris Eubank Jr. is going to have too much for Liam Smith. I think it's almost the opposite now. People think Liam Smith's 100% going to win, and it makes for a great fight. I know Chris is training hard with Bomac and is really taking this seriously. And if we see a Chris Eubank Jr. that we saw against George Groves, even though he lost, I think if we see that resilience, if we see that nature of Chris where he just won't be stopped, if we see that guy back and his physicality is back, and maybe it was the weight loss and the two camps back to back, if we do see that, I think we're in for an incredible fight. I thought we would be the first time, and I think it's going to be an unbelievable fight, one of the best fights of the year.
And a stacked undercard with all your rising talents, with Adam Azeem, Ben Whittaker, Fraser Clark, everyone's on that card.
Yeah, it's sold really well. Hefroncelli on there. Dave Allen, obviously, against Fraser Clark, is a standout. Florian Marku, who we've been waiting to come back. He's been injured since Albania. We took him to Albania last year, and he comes back in a fight against Dylan Moran, which I'm looking forward to. And obviously Ben Whittaker, Adam Azeem in his biggest step up as well. A couple more still to be announced on that card. But yeah, huge night in Manchester. The first one was one of the nights of the year, and I expect this one to be even better.
I'm not sure if you heard or you saw, but Florian Marku and Chris Kongo got face to face, and Florian pushed Chris just now, and cameras went flying, security got involved. So, I mean, if you want to change the opponent and get Chris on the card, I think the fans will be happy with that.
Florian is mental guy, but that's why he's so fun to work with. He's always causing that. I think Kongo was a fight we were looking at for a while. Obviously, Chris had a loss, and Florian was injured, so it never quite happened. I'm sure we'll see it in the future. But Florian with Grant Smith has been working very hard, and I think we're going to see a completely different animal, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm hearing very, very good things, and he's a character. He does huge numbers, and he's back on September the 2nd.
Let's move on to purse bids. Richard Riakporhe, purse bids for Jay Opataya. You pulled out the purse bids. What were the reasons behind pulling Richard out? Opportunity to fight for a world title.
You know what? Every fight that we try and make, even this one, Buatsi Azeez, as you said, Eubank Smith, our 3 fights to start the season, that was going to be that, and Riakporhe against Opataya. Everyone, we do work with all promoters, but every fight we seem to make, there's a conscious effort to try and stop it, try and get in the fighters' heads, try and block it, and we got offered to go to Australia, and all we asked for was proof of funds and the proof of the government, and that never came. And so we told Richard we're ready to go August 23rd. Then, even after it seemed like Jay had signed with Matchroom, we received an offer from his manager saying Matchroom aren't involved. This is the number. We'll come to the UK. Just offer us X, Y, Z. We make the offer, we send over the contract, silence again. And it just went on and on and on. And we believed we would get a fight done. And we always felt like Richard can choose. He'll fight for a world title this year. He's number 1 in WBO. Most of the titles are free to fight for. And he'll fight for a world title. And it got to the point where we were being messed around so much. I don't even think Matchroom, I don't know if Matchroom have even signed Jay Opataya or if it was purely to mess us around. Let's see what happens next. That'll be interesting. And it just got to a stage where everything that was being done in the lead up to that purse bid did not look good and did not feel good. And by the time we got to it, a couple of other opportunities came in, which we'll announce in the next week, and ultimately that was what Richard preferred because he'd been part of the process.
I'm sure you saw the criticism on social media, everyone comparing this to the whole Fabio Wardley and Fraser Clark scenario. But from your perspective, and a lot of people will question this, why did you pull out on the day of the purse bids? Why did it take? Why couldn't you pull out a lot like beforehand?
Look, we did think we would get a deal done because we were communicated that this was what we had to get to. In the end, we had a last minute and a couple of opportunities come through, and we decided that was what we would go to. At the end of the day, we're not the ones messing around with people. Why did 2 weeks before suddenly there's a Matchroom thing involved with Jai Opataya? Let's see if that continues. Where does that go? It's completely. We've seen it with Buatsi Azeez and Azeez being called up and Bivol coming up, and we've seen it with Eubank Smith with Ben. We're not going to be messed around. That's not good for British boxing. We do want to work with all promoters, but since we started, every fight that we even mention or talk about, there's a conscious effort to get involved, scupper it, make it worse for our fighters. People talk about life-changing money. Richard's contract for his next fight is more than he could have ever earned off a 35% of a purse bid. So he knows what the reality is, and it's designed to make us look bad. And unfortunately, sometimes that's the way boxing is, and not had it from others, and it won't happen with others. But that's how it is at the moment for us, and we have to do what we believe is right for the fighter, and the fighters trust us. And to people talking about denying Richard, what we've done with Richard in the past 18 months is incredible. He's one of the fighters that means most to us out of anyone, and that's why we won't have him messed around, and he'll fight for a world title this year.
Again, and this was the last one on this point, where some of the comments made were you were scared because you knew you were going to lose the purse bid. But what you ultimately just said to me just there is that there's a better opportunity for Richard that you're going to announce soon.
Yeah, there's a better opportunity. There's more money for Richard, and ultimately, when you've been messed around that much and you've accepted offers and made offers, you don't know what they're going to do. Are they going to say it's 28 days and we're over in Australia and Richard's got to fly out in 7 days, and when we've got another world title there as well? It just didn't feel good. The disruption that's been driven against any one of our fights doesn't feel good, and ultimately we made the best decision for Richard, and we hope that the games stop, and it'll be, as I say, it'll be interesting to see if what Opataya does, and if Matchroom will be signing him and promoting him. But yeah, it just felt like this was all to disrupt a situation that we didn't really need to be in.
Moving on, any updates on the rematch between Dillian Smith and Okolie? Rumours were out that Okolie's activated his rematch clause. So when do you expect that to take place? You
know what, Chris has actually had a cut. It was fairly deep. He's having to get that sorted. It's kept him out. He probably would have fought in October, but we'll be waiting. I think he's talking about end of November, December being back. But once we get absolute confirmation, then we can decide on what happens next.
In terms of schedule now, you got Eubank Smith beginning of September, nothing else until the 21st. So is there going to be anything else in between?
Yeah, I think this week we'll announce a show on September the 30th. Looking forward to that. And yeah, it was September 2nd, Eubank Smith, September the 30th this week, and then the big one at the O2 as well.
Just away from your shows and your fighters, last week we got some more sad news that another fighter had failed a VADA test, adverse finding. I know we've spoken a lot in detail over the last 8 or 9 months with the whole Conor Ben stuff, but just your reaction when you heard that Dillian Whyte had failed his VADA test.
To be honest, I thought it was dealt with in the right way. It is, it is what it is, and we expected that. But in fairness, thought it was dealt with, and promoters did well. Show still went on. Can't criticise it really. It's not the promoter's fault or the board's fault or VADA's fault. And to be honest, that's the way it should be dealt with every single time. And obviously, Dillian will now go through the process, and we'll see what happens. But it is a shame that when fighters now fail drugs tests, it's just sort of there's almost a possibility every single time. And I know from speaking to our guys in the stable, there is a concern. I've never been asked for so many tests, even from lower down. It used to be main events. We've got to have this. We've got to have that. There's a lot of concern amongst boxers that is being used all the time, and that has come from maybe fighters getting away with it or fighters thinking they can get away with it. And yeah, it's a scary time. It is.
Okay, Ben, appreciate your time, and there'll be a host of media after you. And yeah, roll on Manchester for Smith Eubank.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Ben Shalom for Boxing King Media. Thank you very much.